It's now time for The Sit Down with Don Toni.
The Sit Down, where Don Toni talks one-on-one with his followers.
What are you looking at?
About the world of pro wrestling, pop culture, and so much more.
The Sit Down with Don Toni.
And now, your host, Don Toni.
I hope that bear-like sounding yawn didn't come off through the speaker. I think I muted it. Oh, man, I'm tired. It's Sunday night, 8 p.m., and this is your latest edition of The Sit Down, hosted by yours truly, Don Toni, and all of you. For anybody that's new to our Sunday show, I call it the lazy show. I show up with nothing. No news. We basically cover that all throughout the week. Sunday, it's a little laid back. I just basically spend an hour and a half talking about whatever's on your mind. Most of the discussion always seems to be pro wrestling, so we focus on that. Non-wrestling is always welcomed as well. And we see where it goes. Now, big shout out to everybody who really enjoyed yesterday's show. I tell you the truth, yesterday's episode, and I put the thumbnail aside, definitely my top 10 in favorite shows that I have done in the last couple of years. I mean, from the beginning to end, it was rock solid, to the point that I even decided to do timestamps. Yesterday was an awesome show. And honestly, I don't think there's anything we can do to top it today. Maybe we just piggyback it a little bit. But for those that are new to Sundays, basically what we do is whatever is on your mind, we talk about it. You have to be live in the chat in order to be part of the show. It costs nothing. All you got to do is be a subscriber or a channel member, whichever you prefer. Super chats are never required, but they are appreciated. They help keep me in business. You know, this shit costs a lot of money and a lot of time, but you'll always get some VIP treatment. And normally on Sundays, we get a couple that come in right before the show starts because they want to be a part of the beginning topics of discussion. The only thing I ask is two things. If you're in a chat room and you have a question, write capital letters, the word question before it so I could spot it quicker. And if I get into yours, wait a few minutes to ask something else, let it spread around a little bit, and we'll go as long as we need to. Fair enough? I think that's fair enough. So I want to open up with a couple of super shout outs that came in right before we started, and then we will go right to the chat room. Big shout out to Ronnie C. What's up, Ronnie? 2 questions. When is the next Don and Kev show, and will Jade Cargill succeed in the WWE? Thanks, DT. I'm assuming you mean Jade Cargill and not Cora Jade. First of all, as far as the next DTKC show, it'll either be this Tuesday or next Tuesday. It's a little too soon to do Fastlane predictions, but we definitely are going to be talking about the big topics going around. I will let everybody know probably by tomorrow if we're going to do it this Tuesday. If it's not this Tuesday, it'll probably be next Tuesday. Same format. We'll do it live for our Patreon family. It's only fair. But if you're not part of our Patreon family, patreon.com/Don Toni, no worries. It'll be online at dontoni.com for everybody Wednesday morning. So I'll keep everybody updated. Will Jade Cargill succeed in the WWE? I say it like this. I know a lot of you aren't into Nia Jax. I know a lot of you don't like, some of the lower card wrestlers. But if you look at stars of today that came through NXT, and yes, from Asuka to others, we have had established stars who made it outside of WWE. AJ Styles, Nakamura, Asuka, and the list goes on and on and on. They succeeded and did pretty damn well before they even walked into World Wrestling Entertainment. More times than not, they create stars. it is very rare that someone does not work out. More times than not, when someone does not work out, sometimes it's because of their own doing. Sometimes they may not want it bad enough. Sometimes they open their mouth and say some dumb shit, put their foot in it. Sometimes it just doesn't click. Without naming any names, Dana Brooke, it's nothing personal against some people, but I always use this comparison. I know a lot of people are nauseous for me keep saying it, but there are people that could shoot hoops 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and still suck in the NBA. You could have people in the batting cage for 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 8 hours a day, and still bat 220. Pro wrestling is an art form. It's simulated violence, and sometimes you cannot teach timing. For some people, yes, but for some others, it just doesn't happen. You ever see somebody that walks down the street, or you have a relative that always seems to keep falling, like they trip over their own feet, like they always drop things. They're just like rubber hands. Just some people, just can't put it together. Jade Cargill, betting odds, she will be a megastar. A megastar. It was pretty obvious that she could only go so far in AEW. AEW, some people got a kick out of what I said yesterday, and it was not an insult on women's wrestling. And props to everyone who realized that. But in AEW, as far as women's wrestling goes, if you look at a main course, a nice, good, hearty meal, the women are the vegetables. That's just the way it is. If they weren't just the vegetables, they wouldn't just have one match a week. When you look at the advertisements for Rampage tapings, Collision tapings, you wouldn't just have Julie Hart, and you can't have Kris Statlander and Willow Nightingale on the same banner. It's either or. There would be a little bit more of an even playing field. And listen, I'm going to make this clear. All the women in AEW are scratching and clawing and fighting for more time. But they're not going to bitch and complain about it on social media and create enemies or bigger enemies in AEW. All they can do is do their job, do it as best as they can, and hope that fans, turn out. Not just, listen, anybody could go on social media and cry, to the moon that they should get more time. But it's got to equate to ratings. It's got to equate to merchandise sales. It's got to equate to a lot of factors. And there's a lot of factors that you and I will never even understand. It's as far as the marketing standpoint, to the everyday fan, they will never understand. There is so much of a deep dive of things that we never would realize. Until that changes, the women's division in AEW will always feel a tremendous amount smaller compared to other companies out there. But Jade Cargill, betting odds, she's going to be a megastar. She's going to be a megastar. Only time will tell. Thank you, Ronnie. Liz Ellis Williams, longtime listener since the Minority Report days. I don't know if you know, you won the Patreon predictions contest. I actually posted the winner yesterday night, finally. So you got to DM me. DM me on Patreon so I can hook you up with your prize. But I appreciate the 10 spot. Thank you. He says, longtime listener since the Minority Report days, and even I notice you've always had a mustache. So I'm curious, would you ever shave off your mustache for the right price? I kind of feel like Keith Hernandez. This is a true fact, everybody. When I went into the Navy in 1988, even then, they made you shave a lot of it, but they let you keep a little bit. The last time I have not had a mustache in any capacity is probably when I was like 14 years old, 15 years old. Some of you have seen my Miami Vice days where I wore everything white. Now, I don't have any personal pictures. I wasn't prepared for this question. But up to even 15 years old, I think I had like a little bit of a tramp stamp or whatever it is. Or no, it's a landing strip. I had a little peach fuzz, but I've never shaved it. Never. maybe I would consider doing it for charity. When I shaved my head for St. Baldrick's for kids' cancer, I didn't shave the mustache. I shaved my head bald. And there's pictures that float around. You could see that, but I've never shaved my mustache. So it would have to be a pretty hefty price for me to shave it. I will trim it. Sometimes I'll make it very, very thin. But, yeah, I haven't had a face without a mustache, my God, in what, almost 40 years? So, yeah, would take a lot for me to shave it off. Never know. Never say never. Thank you, Liz Sellers, for that. Dream 101 with the $4.99. Thank you, Dream. Much appreciated. I used to hate Cena from 2010 to 2015, but now I'm a big fan. I enjoy seeing him return from time to time. Glad I made it safe back to New York City. I am glad to be back as well. Not fun to be afraid of flying and you fly home on 9/11, even though I had a few people in the airline industry send me a DM and say that 9/11 is probably the safest day to fly. And in hindsight, they're probably right. I think just Uber, what they did with Uber at JFK was a perfect example of that. Listen, Dream, anybody that goes back to the DTKC show days of 14, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we were not high on Cena as well. I mean, we knew what Cena, the importance of John Cena. Super Cena, his promos, whether you like me or don't like me, you bought a ticket, you have every right. Oh, man, it got so nauseating at times. John Cena, after Thugonomics, I think I would say 2009, 8, 9, 10, around that time frame is probably when we were really getting angry at the Cena push. I think for me, the turning point of warming up to John Cena was when Kevin Owens came to the main roster. Sami Zayn came to the main roster. I think it was around the time when John Cena was the Intercontinental Championship, right? Was it the IC title or the United States title? No, it's got to be the United States title because Kevin Owens stomped on it. And if it was the IC title, we would have been like, I don't give a shit. But when it was the United States title, remember some video censored it out? How dare you step on the United States Championship? When Cena won the United States title and was giving opportunities, even though he won most of those matches, Cena went balls out in those matches. And you realized, me, I'm an old guy. I go back to the 80s with wrestling. When you watch Hulk Hogan perform in Japan, even people to this day, people be like, holy shit, I didn't know he could work. Because in the United States, fans didn't care if Hogan had a 4-star match. They just wanted to be entertained. Hulk Hogan did not have to have that kind of match in the United States. John Cena obviously couldn't have as simple as a match as Hulk Hogan did in the 80s, but there was a lot that John Cena did not need to do. And that's probably part of the reason why Cena could still do it a little bit today. I enjoy Cena now. I have no ill will. You don't hear the Cena Sucks chants anymore. And he has earned that. He has earned that. So I am and listen, I guarantee anybody that's been a wrestling fan for about 10 or 15 years, they probably feel in many ways just like you do. Some people still don't like Cena at all, but for the majority of people out there, John Cena's won them over. You know what I think it is also? You got to understand the Thugonomics days. When John Cena was doing the Thugonomics, it wasn't just doing raps. Everything about him was like a Jersey Shore asshole. Even when he would interact with women. I mean, you remember some of those segments. And then a couple of years later, with all the Make-A-Wish stuff, like early on, and listen, this might offend some people, but facts are facts. Early on, a lot of people, including yours truly, thought, is John Cena like this good-hearted? Is he this, or is this a little bit of a PR? And you really could not feel like what was the true John Cena. And as time went on and time went on and time went on, you realized that what you saw is what you get. John Cena, authenticity. And I think that's why a lot of people were won over as well. So thank you, Dream. Much appreciated. All right. Let's head over to the chat room. Okay. Shout out to everybody who is live. Kevin Milwaukee with a comment. Toni Storm is doing the best work of her entire career right now. She's proven with her character work that she's got the it factor since she lost the title and went crazy. All around talent. Toni Storm is great. And it's not just the changing of the hairstyles that she does, but Toni Storm shows that if given the opportunity, she is the top, near the top of women's wrestling, period. She's got the ability. She could talk. She's got a personality about her. She connects with the fans. And I can't say anything bad about Toni Storm. Maybe people thought she was a little extra moody when she left WWE. I remember when everybody kept showing the Thanksgiving pie in the face and all that stuff. How could you do that to Toni Storm? You go back a little bit, AEW, they did dumb shit as well. Toni Storm, the problem is she was a small fish in a small pond. WWE, she was a small fish in a small pond. Understand that. Picture it with your eyes. She was a small fish in a small pond. She should have been a bigger fish in that small pond. The problem is that when you got piranhas like Charlotte Flair and Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley and Bayley and at the time Sasha Banks, and it goes on and on and on, Asuka, Io Sky, I don't think it was up at the time. You look at the number of women, and when I say piranhas, they were not out to hurt Toni Storm. It's just that, unfortunately, Toni Storm was having a difficult time breaking through. And as a result, she had to leave. So now she's a big fish in a small pond. And yes, there are a lot of women hired by AEW. If you ever go through the AEW women's division, it'll shock you how many women they have under contract. But a lot of those women, if you want to use the pond reference, they're like little minnows swimming around. They almost look like sperm cells. They're little minnows swimming around. They're not making any factor, unfortunately. But Toni Storm right now is a big fish in a small pond. And the more that she keeps it that way, her value goes up and up and up. Just keep in mind that sooner or later, Toni Storm may be in a similar situation of a Jade Cargill, down the line of a Jamie Hayter. And you go through the top of the top in the AEW women's roster. I mean, you could have 40 women employed, but maybe only 7 are at that top level that you could intertwine and mix and match and put it all together. When you exhaust that, what do? So it's going to come a time where Toni Storm may have to leave. And guess what? For all of you out there that don't like Charlotte Flair, she's close to 40. How many more years will she wrestle? I think Charlotte Flair is the number one woman in wrestling in the last 15 years, period. There are a lot of other women that are close, but to me, Charlotte Flair is number one. I absolutely am a fan, but she is not going to be wrestling many, many more years. And some other your favorites, they may leave sooner than you think. So Toni Storm is at that age where at some point she can capitalize. She will. All right. AS7607, staying on a women's wrestling topic, which is very cool. Am I surprised Jade Cargill never got the AEW Women's World title? And if she is WWE bound, will she start in NXT or immediately jump to the main roster? I touched on this yesterday. If anybody that wants to go check it out, What's my timestamp? 20 minutes. All right, that's easy to remember. For anybody that didn't tune in yesterday, there's 3 ways they could go about this with Jade Cargill. And the 3 scenarios all have one thing in common, and that's not just signing with WWE. One scenario is she goes to NXT. She goes to NXT. Somebody emailed me this morning and said, do you think she'd be a great fit in the metaphor? And I'm like, I know why people are saying that, but I'm like, no. Jade Cargill's got to be by herself, beating the fuck out of people. Just dismantling, but not in the Goldberg undefeated 95-0. It's much different. WWE knows what to do. But there's 3 scenarios. One, she goes to NXT. She goes to NXT and, hones her skills, puts it together, acclimates herself to the WWE style, which is much different. Understand something. I watched that clip very recently where Jade Cargill was talking about using a chair for the first time. And she said that it was CM Punk that went up to her and said, listen, when you use a chair, there is a way of doing it. And he taught her how to hold the chair. And she said no one in AEW ever told her how to use the chair. They just said, you're going to use a chair tonight. And CM Punk was like, wait a minute, did you do a chair shot before? You got to do it. And he taught her how to do it. Now, that's not, to sing praise for CM Punk. That my point is, WWE is going to have her under the fucking microscope for everything that she does. Even if she passes gas, they're going to have, you need to do this. My point is, she's going to be under such a microscope in WWE that she's going to be trained and she is going to turn around. She's not going to, she's not going to disrespect AEW. I would be shocked as shit if she ever does an interview and say, AEW never taught me the fundamentals of this and that. But WWE is going to teach her things that she never realized she even needed to know. So NXT is a possibility. The second possibility is you have a debut at the Royal Rumble. Debut as a surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble, you don't have to do as much. You're surrounded by boatloads of other women. You just, eliminate people over the top rope. You pull an Omos. And she could definitely do shit that way. And then ultimately she could get eliminated, and that's her introduction to the WWE universe. The third option is when you get closer to WrestleMania, she lays out Charlotte Flair. And she has a match with Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. Now, for those that didn't tune into yesterday, I am prepared with Bulletproof Shield. For those that are going to say to me, DT, she's nowhere near ready to face Charlotte Flair. Well, first of all, if Bad Bunny and Logan Paul could pick it up in 6-7 months, Jade Cargill already has a head start because she knows a decent amount to do in the ring. She had a great match with Kris Statlander the other day. If that was Charlotte Flair instead of Kris Statlander on Rampage, people would have been like, hey, that would have been a great SmackDown match. Number two, whether she debuted in NXT, actually there is a fourth option. The fourth option would be pretty much the common denominator with the other 3. Whether she debuts in NXT, whether she shows up at the Royal Rumble, whether she lays out Charlotte Flair, or she does none of the above, no matter what scenario, she still has to be in the Performance Center for months and months and see how she progresses. You get towards December, you start saying, okay, is she ready for TV? We put her in the Royal Rumble. You reevaluate then. If they think, you know what, she looks like she could go with Charlotte Flair, not on Charlotte Flair's level, but enough. I mean, I brought up Omos as an example yesterday. He had a great match with Braun Strowman, had a great match with Brock Lesnar. He had a great match with Seth Rollins. Omos has proved that he isn't as good as those guys, but he can hang enough where he looked decent. Jade Cargill only needs to do that. Because even if she only does that, you know what people say? Oh, she's still got a whole career ahead of her. She's just starting. she's just starting. Could you imagine how good Jade Cargill will be 5 years from now? So she doesn't have to be 5-star Cargill. All she has to do is enough. So those are the scenarios. And guess what? By the end of the year, even if she is put on TV for NXT, if WWE feels, you know what, not this WrestleMania, wait until after WrestleMania, the night after WrestleMania, the SmackDown after WrestleMania, then you could put her on TV. So they have many options. I personally think none of those options are wrong. But one thing is for certain, she has to be in the Performance Center for the foreseeable future. And you reevaluate as you go along. That's the right way to go. That is the right way to go, in my opinion. So, all right. Benjamin asks, have I noticed that Tony Khan will debunk everything except for the running joke of him being a cokehead? Ben, I'm going to say this in a respectful way. Fuck off. No, I'm kidding. Number one, if I was Tony Khan, if he doesn't do cocaine, I would never acknowledge it. That's an awful accusation to make. So just because he ignores it, plus he's in a lose-lose situation. If he goes publicly and says, listen, guys, I don't do cocaine. People be liar, look at those eyes. Those are cocaine eyes. Yeah, he'll never win with that. But I will say this. Very interesting that he did not immediately come out to question the 72,000 number that the United Kingdom revealed with the turnstiles. How he would let that snowball and just continue, it's kind of boggling that he has not said a damn thing about it. And I think the reason being is because if he challenges the United Kingdom, they're not challenging a journalist. They're not challenging a podcaster. You're challenging the United Kingdom. Plus, he's going back to Wembley next year. You think he's going to start a war with a building that he wants to do more business with? I am pretty fascinated that he has not said anything. Personally, if I was him, I would just come out and say, listen, I want to apologize to everyone, but I kind of mixed up the numbers when I announced it. The 81,036 was the total number of tickets sold, but we learned later on that of the 81,000 tickets, 73,000 appeared. That's it. If he says that, you're going to get some assholes online. You don't have the record. You don't have the record. Nah, 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 nah. You got to deal with it. You know how you fight that? Put on a better fucking show next year and get 80,000 to show up. Right? Who knows? Who knows? A year from now, they may have someone on the roster. And no, I don't think Adam Copeland will be enough, but they could have someone on the roster that could, get them a little bit more buzz. But it's got to be a team effort. You can't just throw shit together. So that's how you combat it. Kevin says, I just solved the whole crisis in 15 seconds. Because I'm not taking sides. It's funny because, I have a couple of friends of mine that, not close friends. We don't break bread. They didn't, they're not the godfather to my nephews and nieces, but I'm friendly with people in multiple companies. And, I've developed friendships over the years. It's not a bragging thing. It's not rubbing it in people's faces. But, you talk to people and, I've brought this up and Kev has them. A lot of people have them. Jason Solomon has them. I know JD from New York absolutely has them. Not everybody likes any of us. They pick and choose. But one thing is when people tell you, keep doing what you're doing. just keep doing what you're doing. I'm not looking to get a hand job from WWE. I'm not looking to get a hand job from AEW. I want to be entertained to the fullest. And that means watching them all. And people do realize that there are some people out there who have to be given a hand job, who have to be coddled, and, that's on them. But, I just do my thing. And I think people understand I'm not taking sides here. I'm trying. A lot of people could complain, but when you ask them, well, how would you fix this? I'm fire Vince. Kevin Dunn, the Beaver. They don't have answers. They complain. Well, how do you fix it? Sorry. Roger Rubio. Super shout out alert. Thank you very much, Robert. Robert. Roger Rubio with the 10 spot. Thank you, Roger. Over. I keep thinking of Airplane whenever I hear your name, Roger. Roger. Over. Me and my friend Junior are going to NXT No Mercy. We both don't keep up with the product so much. What are some things to look forward to? Some of the wrestlers we should be looking forward to. Well, we don't know the whole card for NXT No Mercy, but Braun Breaker versus Baron Corbin is going to be more entertaining, and I think you're going to realize Ilya Dragunov is currently my favorite wrestler in NXT. Ilya Dragunov is something special. Carmelo Hayes, he's a future superstar, no question, but I think Carmelo Hayes' championship run, I just don't see Trick Williams being the threat for the title. They did that storyline, and I know you say you don't watch NXT, so you probably don't know this, but they did a storyline where Trick Williams wanted to cement his own path in NXT. The problem is that when he and Carmelo Hayes, hugged or whatever, you felt like, okay, Trick Williams is trying to cement his way, so he's all the way down here, and Carmelo Hayes is already up here. Trick Williams is not a threat for the championship. Trick Williams feuding with Carmelo Hayes, you don't need no titles. So I think Ilya has a legit shot of winning the NXT championship. As far as women's wrestling goes, Roxanne Perez, Blair Davenport, Taya Valkyria, Dominic Mysterio is going to be on the card. Mustafa Ali is reinvigorated. Dana Brooke, who is going to probably turn full-blown heel this Tuesday or next Tuesday at the latest. You got enough. The good thing about it is you could go into NXT, not follow the product. When you see what you see, you realize that it's not just the minor leagues that should just be in Florida in front of 150 people. That they actually do put on enough of a show, and the effort and the work and the quality that, they should sell 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 tickets. So go in there with a clear mind, and when you will leave, you'll be like, holy shit, that was fucking great. It's not going to be Raw. It's not going to be SmackDown. Benjamin said I sounded like the Tasmanian Devil. Yeah. I thought I sounded like Captain Caveman, if anybody remembers Captain Caveman. But go into NXT with open mind, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. You will get your money's worth. And the shows will be shorter. It's usually about 2.5 hours. Maybe give or take a couple of minutes, but you'll have a blast, man. Honestly, a lot of you know this already, I went on my honeymoon last year to Florida, and I went to a half of an NXT show, and I happened to go the night that Solo Sikoa made the surprise return and won the North American Championship, and then he surrendered the belt because he's, on the main roster. I was there for about a little over an hour and a half, and the environment in there was awesome. And you didn't feel like you were just in a bullshit indie fed. They actually are doing a great job. So you'll have a ball. You'll have a ball. You don't get many people complaining when they go to an NXT premium live event. Gruss is asking, thank you, Roger. Gruss is asking, did I hear about Zilla Fatu leaving Booker T's Reality of Wrestling? What do I think about the situation? I don't think much of it right now. Zilla Fatu is still very, very young. Zilla Fatu, we don't know what his future will be. You know, I think when you hear bloodline storylines, you know, people insist that almost anybody who is blood related to the bloodline should be part of this storyline. When people were using other, you know, wrestlers in the family. Zilla Fatu still got a long ways ahead. If Zilla Fatu has an opportunity to develop elsewhere, fine. If there was a falling out between him and the company, fine. I don't want to read too far into it. If there's something that Booker T feels should be known, you know, we'll hear about it. I haven't heard much about it, but whatever the situation is, I mean, you know, he's got his whole career. Even if WWE decided they wanted to sign him, he is nowhere near television level. You know, I don't even think Nick Wayne should be on TV on a weekly basis, and that's not a shot on him. But there's no rush. So I don't think it's big of a deal. I don't think it's a big deal. All right. Oliver, celebrating 12 years as a listener. He would like to know about his favorite wrestler, Kane. How would I summarize his legacy? Do I think he should have been more successful? No. Kane has, listen, I know a lot of people don't like Glenn Jacobs' politics, but Kane has had one of the best big men careers in recent memory. When he debuted, that's gotta be Kane. You know, I mean, guy wearing a funny red suit, being managed by Paul Bearer, which was cool. But, you know, feuding with The Undertaker, you know, it was good, but you didn't feel like it was going to really go to Hall of Fame levels. Listen, when he debuted, no one out there thought, oh, this guy's a future Hall of Famer. I mean, we knew where he came from. You know, we remember the Unabomber stuff with Al Snow. For a lot of you out there that don't know, you should ask Al Snow, you know, some memories of early Glenn Jacobs when it was Al Snow and the Unabomber. Glenn Jacobs has done more than I could have ever imagined in wrestling. And, you know, even when he turned heel and removed the mask and he had like black makeup on his face and he looked like, I think, Larry from the Three Stooges, I was like, oh, God, they just killed this guy. And he somehow made it work. You know, they did some dumb shit, electrifying Shane McMahon's testicles and some of the, but Kane has had a Hall of Fame career, ended up doing 10 times more than I ever envisioned that he would do. And, you know, even though a lot of people don't like his political views, people still respect the fact of what he has done in wrestling. Not many, listen, you go back to the 70s, the 80s, and even the 90s, you know, big men in wrestling didn't have that kind of career. That's why Paul White still fascinates me. I know he really doesn't wrestle anymore, but when you think back in 1994, around that time period, and you would have said to me that even 20 years later, Big Show would still be doing it, I'd be like, you're nuts. You know, it just, Kane has had an awesome career. No question. All right, we got another super shout out to get into. Oh, DT is eating good tonight. Nah, it goes back to show. Thank you, Joe McGee, with a 20 spot. Much love, my friend. Went to Cheerco's for a cannoli yesterday. And my God, DT, it was so good. I wouldn't have even cared if laxatives were in it. I'll take another. Cheerco's Bakery, CIRCOS, is an iconic bakery here in Brooklyn, New York. And when I was doing the Toni cannoli stuff in indie wrestling, and I would bring the cannolis out, they were always from Chircos. That is the only bakery. And, you know, just so people realize, to drive from my dad's grocery meat store right now to Chircos Bakery is about 40 minutes. And trust me, the traffic sucks because it's all, you know, residential streets. So my father still, to this day, has people driving from Chircos and they bring him gasaderas, if anybody knows what those are, zeppelis, finges, cannolis, and he sells them at his store because not everybody could travel to Knickerbocker Avenue in Brooklyn to get Chircos. So they bring it to my dad's store. My dad sells it there. And more times than not, my dad sells it for the same price that Chircos charges because he does it more of a courtesy to, you know, the people in the neighborhood that want to eat it. It is epic shit. That's why when I told the Trinity story last week, and I'm not talking about Trinity Fatu, I'm talking about Trinity, former TNA star from 15 years ago. When Trinity showed up at a Mass Maniac show and saw me opening the box of Chircos cannolis, she went nuts. She's like, oh my God, Chircos. And she took 2 or 3. And she's very aware of Chircos. Epic bakery. And yeah, so if you had the opportunity to eat one, man, they are phenomenal. They're absolutely phenomenal. Worth every penny. And listen, if anybody remembers about, 4 years ago about that we had a get together at Lucky 13 podcast and, a lot of listeners out there. I brought cannolis that night to everybody at Lucky 13. In fact, that was when I first had the diverticulitis. And I had surgery about 2 months before, and I was in a lot of abdominal pain, and a lot of people were afraid that I wasn't going to show. And I was like, we planned this for 2 or 3 years. There ain't no way I'm going to miss this. And I remember, and the video's probably still online, where I was at my dad's parking lot about an hour before the get-together, and I posted on Twitter, guys, look, I got the cannolis right here. It looked like a bad outtake from Goodfellas. I said, I'm coming. I got the cannolis. They're awesome. So I'm glad that you were able to experience it. I don't know if you've had it before, but Chircos is awesome, man. They are, and they've been around for, 70 years, 80 years? It's got to be. It's got to be. So very cool. Thank you, Joe. I can't buy a cannoli with the super chat, but because I'm on keto. When I go off keto, I will absolutely be having a cannoli. You best damn believe that. So, Rocky is asking, what is my favorite TV judge? I used to enjoy Judge Judy. She was a nasty, nasty woman on TV. I enjoyed Judge Judy. I almost was on Judge Judy. They offered me to be on the TV show. And I don't want to get into a long story about it, but for those that don't know the story, and you know what? If you ever watch any of those TV court shows, the small claims courts, it's a little tidbit you may not know. Even if you lose the case, the court pays it. A lot of people don't know that. Long story short, it's got to be 15, 16 years ago. Some livery taxi guy came into my office, wanted insurance. Sold him insurance. He lied on his application where he uses his cars. Instead of his insurance being like $5,000 a year, it was like $15,000 a year. They did an inspection. They found that he lied on his application, and it ended up that his deposit wasn't enough. He canceled the policy a short time after, and they kept all his money because he lied on his application, and the amount of time that the insurance stood open, the money was used. He tried to take me to small claims court, even though I didn't do anything wrong. And I was pissed the fuck off because he's the one that lied on the application. He says that I didn't serve him the right way and I didn't warn him of this and I didn't. So anyway, long story short, I get a letter in the mail from Judge Judy. I still have it in my office somewhere. One day I'll find it and I'll show you all. But I got a letter from Judge Judy seeing if I want to be on their TV show to give them a call. So I called him up and I said, how did you find out about my case? And I learned that online, when you hear about somebody gets arrested, Jeff Hardy gets arrested, Cash Wheeler gets arrested, whoever it is, the courts don't call journalists and say, Cash Wheeler just got arrested. No, you could go on the court sites and do a search and things will pop up. So what Judge Judy does and all of these shows do is they search online and see all the dockets and see all the lawsuits. They pull the information because it's public information, and that's how they send it out. Just like when you get dumb advertisements in the mail, subscribe to cable, apply for this credit card, get this, get that. You say to yourself, how did they get my address? They buy a listing. So they said to me if I would go on the show. And I said, no. And they said, well, one of the good things is that even if you lose the case, we will pay the money. And I said, I'm still not doing it. And the woman said, do you mind if I ask why? I said, yeah, because if I lose the fucking case on TV, every fucking livery guy that's ever bought insurance with me that feels they got slighted, they're all going to fucking take me to court. If I lose a lawsuit on TV, plus what does that look for my reputation if I'm on TV and I lose a case? And then people are like, I ain't going to him. He fucking did. I'm like, I didn't do nothing wrong. This is bullshit. And I told him no, and I hung up the phone. But the guy ended up dropping the case because he had no substantiation to go after me. I didn't do anything wrong. But the thing is, Judge Judy wanted me to be on TV, and if you lose, they still pay. So when you watch some of these court cases and the people on TV like, that's bullshit. I don't know how I'm going to get this money. He ain't getting a dime out of me. Yeah, no shit, because the court is actually paying the plaintiff, not you. All right. Bobby Means is asking, HBK 1996 versus HBK 1994, which is a better version and why? Well, I can't close my eyes and flash back to exactly what HBK did in 1994 compared to what HBK did in 1996. That is too close together. I will tell you that from watching Raw in 1993 and then it going to around 1996-ish when they started getting towards Attitude, I would kind of lead towards Shawn Michaels 1996. When he first won the championship and he, with WrestleMania with Bret Hart and everything else, whatever year that is, that's when you started realizing that Shawn Michaels is legit. When he started to get a little bit of the attitude, Marty Jannetty going through the window, which was a couple of years earlier, at that time being a boy toy with Sherry Martel, he was more of like a mosquito, annoying. You just wanted to slap him in the face. By 95, 96, even though, WWF with the cartoon shit, with the plumber and the fucking, the MVP, and I'm not talking about Montel Vontavious Porter, whatever his name was. I'm talking about, some of the bad gimmicks in 95. I would say 96. All right. Triple X, shout out to you, my friend. Thank you for the 2 spot. I don't think he go to Chaircrows too. DT Daniel Jones was great today. Needs consistency. Please do not super chat this. Who the hell's Daniel Jones? I'm assuming he's a quarterback. Is he the fill-in quarterback for the Jets? Giants quarterback. Thank you, Michael Gonzalez. Shows you how much I follow the NFL right now. I don't watch football pretty much. I still miss the Eli Manning days. I still miss even back further than that. Jeff Hostetler I never liked. But I'm just not into the NFL right now. keep in mind with all the wrestling going on and all the shows going on and married life and personal life and work, I don't have the time like I used to. That's why we never did a baseball show. A lot of people don't know, but about 5 years ago, I was this close of starting a baseball podcast. And then I thought about it and I was like, wait a minute. If I do a baseball podcast, I have to follow every baseball team because I can't just talk about Mets and Yankees all the time. If somebody calls me up and says, what do you think about the Diamondbacks' performance lately? You got to be prepared for that shit. So I never, ever pursued it. But right now, I'm just not into the NFL. Daniel Jones, I will tell you this, just being an observer online and seeing like football teams. I mean, I know the Jets won, even though they lost Aaron Rodgers for the season. By the way, I heard Aaron Rodgers had some interesting, type of surgery for his injury. And they think there's a possibility he may be able to come back before the year is up. Let me tell you something. If they could stay near the playoff picture and Aaron Rodgers is able to come back, that would be, and not win the Super Bowl, but at least get into the playoffs or go in a little bit, he would suddenly become one of those beloved people in New York. Here in New York today, the Mets honored Bartolo Colon. He retired today as a Met, and I couldn't believe that he still was not officially retired. To me, he was okay, but I think he was lovable because he was overweight and was just very laid back, but he became an icon in New York. So it's weird how some people become iconic status. Daniel Jones, I have never really heard about him much. And that just goes to show you, even here in New York, people haven't been talking about him. But look, if he could string a couple of wins together and get, some momentum, trust me, Daniel Jones will be a household name like this. Just like that. So, but listen, I root for the Giants. They are my favorite football team when I do follow them. I root for the Giants over the Jets. So, thank you, Triple X, for that. Okay. Raul Harris is asking me, what was my favorite world title design? Oh, easy. Ric Flair with the WCW Heavyweight Championship. Or NWA, if you remember when he showed up with Bobby Heenan on Primetime Wrestling, I think it was. The big gold belt, that's how they call it. That belt is beautiful. When Bobby Heenan showed up with that championship on WWF TV, this is the real world championship. That belt is tremendous. If I had a choice, listen, my favorite belt when I was growing up was Magnificent Morocco's green Intercontinental Championship. Green is not even my favorite color, even though it's the color of money. And my first ever car was green. But, I just, something about that belt I always enjoyed. I think maybe because when I looked at the belt, I thought about the memories that were attached to it. But as far as beauty-wise, for me, it's Ric Flair's championship. A few people bringing up WWF's wing belt. That was a beautiful belt as well. I think for a lot of people, when you look at the belt, it's not just the beauty of the belt, it's what memories it triggers as well. Because, look, I have told people about Morocco's belt and they've looked at it and they're like, you like that? Or some people like, oh, it's nice, and I realize, you know what? It's probably the memories that it's triggering when you see it. It's like sometimes when you hear a song, it sparks certain memories, good or bad, happy or sad. So with certain visuals, I mean, look, I still have my black 1991 Lincoln Mark 7. I'm probably going to take it out of the garage later this week and drive it a little bit. But when I see one on the street, especially if I see a white one, because I used to have a white one, And I have a lot of memories of that white one, especially even in wrestling when we used to throw Vinny DeGuido in the trunk and everything. If any of you remember seeing those indie videos of me managing, we used my car as a prop several times. So you see a vehicle, it brings back memories. So I get it why people will choose different titles. So thank you for that. Okay. We're at 55 minutes. So let's start bringing this home a little bit. I don't want to overload anyone. Yesterday we did 2.5 hours, which was an hour longer than we expected, but we had a banger yesterday. Top 10 recent memory. That's how good the episode was yesterday. Will Rally's, I always fumble this. Will Rally Sport Rally 1. Yes, I got it. Will Rally Sport Rally 1. Hi, DT from the UK. Love your show. Thoughts on Britt Baker losing last night to Kris Statlander, losing her last 7 matches in a row. Thought she was meant to be top AEW women in the company. Honestly, my opinion on it, Britt Baker is a perfect example why wins and losses don't matter in AEW. Why did Britt Baker get a title shot yesterday? Because before yesterday, she had lost her last 6 straight matches. Why did she get the title? She just lost a 4-way match for a shot at Saraya's title. She lost. And a couple of days later, she gets a title shot anyway. It doesn't matter in AEW. And that's not necessarily a knock. That just, to me, I personally think, this is how I truthfully believe. I mean, I don't lie to you all, so I always truthfully believe what I say, but I emphasize this. I think the only reason why Britt Baker has lost 7 matches in a row is because of the IWC's recent criticism that Britt Baker seems to have gotten worse in the last year. So I think this is their answer. Like, okay, well, she loses a bunch of matches. You know, people don't view it as much. But in her loss Saturday, she had a great match. She had one of her better matches. And the great thing about it was you didn't need no weapons. Didn't need no weapons. So I think the losses are strategic to offset the negative vibes online. Britt Baker is one of their top stars. Again, she just got a title shot. That should say enough. She's good. She's good. She definitely needs to get better. Because listen, forget feuds. Trish and Becky have had a crappy feud, which had an amazing end to it. But even when you see people have some feuds that aren't so spectacular, how often do they just suck in the ring or just feel like they have regressed then progressed? Everybody has a bad match. Everybody on the main roster of the WWE, everybody's had a bad match. You know, it happens. Sometimes you just don't have it that day. But it's not to the point where someone says, I don't know, man, this person, it feels like he or she's just gotten worse. Something about this person, it just feels like over the last 6 months this year, they've gotten worse. You don't hear many people saying that. Britt Baker, you heard people saying that. And I think this 7 losses is to try to offset that a little bit. Because how would people be reacting right now if she was on a 7-match winning streak and not doing all that well? So she's still one of their top stars. I have not thoroughly thought about the PWI top 500 list yet. I'm not sure if it'll be a topic of discussion on Monday. If it's not a topic of discussion on Monday, I promise you, if Kevin and I do a show on Tuesday, we'll cover it then. If we do not do one Tuesday, then I have a choice. Do it on this coming Saturday's Don Toni show, or Kevin and I discuss it next week. I heard Roman Reigns is no longer in the number 1 spot, which I understand because he's not having as many matches. Problem is for PWI, and again, I have not looked at the whole list. I'm going to look at it, think about it, then I'll comment. But I will say this for now. PWI has had people very high on the list before that had very few matches. Very few matches. I don't think people understand how few some people had matches last year and the year before. COVID is part of the reason for 2020 and 2021. Absolutely. But some people were very high on that list with very few matches. So if you're going to pull Roman Reigns out of the number one spot, it better be more than, well, he just hasn't had enough matches. I haven't read any of it yet. I have no idea what they said. I don't want to know. But I have a feeling that's going to be a big part of it. And maybe deservingly so. Maybe deservingly so. But we will definitely talk about it within the next week for sure. So, again, PWI is not what it used to be. It's a conversation piece more than anything else. Obviously, and let's be honest about it, AEW gives PWI a hell of a lot more attention than WWE does. So, of course, you're going to see some names. I have something funny I am going to share with you tomorrow. I don't have the picture in this computer, but it is worth the wait for tomorrow. Somebody went into Chat GPI, and I don't utilize that as much as I should, but somebody went into Chat GPI and gave them 6 different scenarios of what you would classify is the perfect wrestler. And I don't want to give any of it away yet, but they used, how in baseball, people will say that someone's a 5-tool player. And it's like they could pitch, well, they could throw, they could catch, they could run, they could hit, they could run, defense, whatever it is, like they're a 5-tool player. I've used that term as a 6-tool player in wrestling. Offense, defense, cutting a promo, whatever it is. So someone used Chat GPI and did 6 different categories about what they would classify as the perfect wrestler. And the results are hilarious. I will give you a hint. Not one wrestler from AEW came up in the top. And that's subject for debate. I think Bryan Danielson is a great argument for some people out there. No question. I'm not shitting on AEW, but my point is it's about a conversation more than anything else. Some places will heavily listen. I did hear a certain women's wrestler became like the highest ranked wrestler in PWI history. I'm not going to say her name right now. I want to read the list first. But my first reaction was, who were the caliber of her opponents? Then you compare it to the wrestlers, the women you see on TV. How much of a draw is this woman? So there's a lot of factors that I think PWI does not weigh in. So that's why I don't put that much weight into it. Shit. You guys know this. I could have been in the PWI top 500 back in 2006, 7, and 8. They sent me the paper. I could have been in the PWI top 500 because I technically had a couple of matches. If I would have sent my information back in, I probably would have been ranked like 488. But if you had a match or two, you sent your info in, you were in the PWI. Somebody gave it to me like, put it in. I'm like, no. I said, I'll fucking get eaten alive online. I was a lot more thin-skinned at the time. But looking back on it, you see that ECW banner in the back? Something tells me that in place of that, you would have saw Don Toni, PWI, number 499. I didn't want to insult anyone else out there. So, trust me, I shouldn't have been in the top 1 million. All right. Chris Maycock says Ring of Honor has really muddled up the waters in AEW. Listen, as much as Tony Khan loves Ring of Honor, there's a reason why for 20 years Ring of Honor did not draw thousands and thousands outside of WrestleMania weekend. You could force it. You could put Jericho as the champion. You could put them on TV every week. You could have a main event. Oh, look, the Mogul Assembly, which I love. Oh, they're going to take on Adam Page and the Young Bucks on Wednesday. You could force feed Ring of Honor. It's kind of funny because you remember last year, my thumbnail, force feeding Honor. I still got it somewhere. Pretty wild to realize that was over a year ago, force feeding Honor. No matter how hard they do that, it's still a niche audience. And just because it gets pushed on TV, the problem with Ring of Honor is simple. Doesn't have the identity that it should. It's the same problem that Impact Wrestling had for a long time. They're trying to still rebuild it now. You need an identity. And Impact Wrestling lost their identity. They were doing that Wrestle House shit for a little while, and it was funny, and it was entertaining, but it didn't help build their identity. Lucha Underground had a great identity, but it was a niche product. MLW has a little bit of an identity. The problem is the wrestlers there are not, enough mainstream name value to get eyes on it. Ring of Honor lacks identity because it's so sprinkled in different areas. This is a bad example, but maybe some people will understand it. If you walk into a supermarket and you go to the frozen food section and you look at all the frozen hamburgers and French fries and everything else, and you see a box that says White Castle on it. If you've never had White Castle before, you look at it and you see these tiny little hamburgers and you look at it and you're like, maybe I'll try it. Maybe I heard about it. Maybe I'll give it a shot. But the supermarket and the frozen food section and the hamburger section, the identity is not White Castle. It's just a bunch of meat. So you could put little things here and there, but it's not the identity. You got to go to a White fucking Castle. You got to go to White Castle and experience it. Walk in there, smell the onions, buy a 6-pack fresh. Then you eat it and you're like, okay, now I know why White Castle is hyped. With Ring of Honor, it's, you see a little bit here in this aisle and this aisle, and you try to put it at the front of this aisle, but at the end of the day, people just see so many different options. It doesn't stand out. And the problem is Tony Khan does not want to build it for fight. You remember when Billy Corgan said that NWA was going to be a 20-year project? 20 years. People thought it was nuts. But he understood that the amount of years to repair and slowly rebuild and build, take a couple of steps back and build and build and build. He thought 20 years. Tony Khan don't want to wait 5 years. Tony Khan just wants it in your face. Buy it now. Ring of Honor should be on the level of AEW. If Ring of Honor is on AEW TV, fans should be invested in Ring of Honor just as much as AEW, and they're not. They're not. And there's a lot of people on the current Ring of Honor product that I like, but it lacks identity. It lacks identity. And the problem is that the people who matter in the media world will not say that about Tony Khan or Ring of Honor. The people in the media world, a lot of them are more, they're just like there with their tongue out, waiting. Here, Tony, you know what I'm talking about. I don't need to say anything else. People are like, ew. Oh, no, that's what he was talking. Ew. It's true. Tony, Ring of Honor needs some identity. And it's not just different commentators, different looking belts, different music. That's not identity. Impact Wrestling lost their identity years ago. And it's hard to realize that when you're the inside looking in. When you're on the outside looking in, you could see it. Here's a good example. I've lost 15 pounds in the last 2 months. People have said that they see my face a little skinnier. I don't know. I don't think so. When I came back from Florida, I thought I gained 10 pounds. I actually lost 4. How many of you out there, if you have rude family members or friends or coworkers, how many of you out there in the last 10 years had somebody come up to you and say, I think you're gaining a little weight. You know, your face is getting fat. How many of you had that happen? My father's done that to me. My father said it to me 3 months ago. How's married life? It's great. He says, I can tell. And I was like, how can you tell? He says, your face is getting fat. And he said that to me. My point is, for me, looking in the mirror every single day, I don't realize if I'm getting fatter or if I'm getting lighter unless I weigh myself on the scale. When you have someone that just says, you look amazing. You look amazing. See, my wife, I swear on a stack of Bibles, she says it's one of the greatest things about me, and it's one of the worst things about me. My wife will say to me, honey, how do I look in this outfit? And I'll be honestly, I'm like, it looks like you're pregnant. And she'll tear the outfit off and throw it away. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but I'll tell her. And she'll tell me too. I bought these, I'm not kidding. What's the brand? I'm looking at it right now. Hey, Bolter. Bolter? Bolter. Bolter. I'm looking at them right now. I'm not going to show you them. Bolter. Bolter. I bought these boxer shorts. This has to do with AEW, by the way. I bought these boxer shorts on Amazon 2 weeks ago. The brand called Bolter. They're supposed to feel great. It's supposed to keep like your body cool. And I was like, yeah, let me buy a pack. And I wore one yesterday for the first time. And I went inside to get a glass of water. And she's like, what's up with your boxers? And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, your balls are hanging on the side of your. I looked down. They weren't out exposed, like, you know, visiting the house. But the way it was set up, like my whole thing was like sideways. And I was like, what's wrong with these? And I pulled them up. And every few minutes, it just felt like, you know, you ever see Shawn Michaels where one eye is looking one way and the other eye is looking at the other way? That's how it felt like down there. For some reason, one kept drifting this way. And I realized they suck. But she has the balls, pun intended, to tell me you look ridiculous in them. You look like a clown. That's not sexy. It looks like you have a tumor on the side of your leg. You know, because it's so with Ring of Honor and with Tony Khan, unfortunately you have the people online that are not going to tell. They're just going to say, you're doing an amazing job. Everything is epic, amazing, unbelievable. And the problem is when problems happen, you know, it just feels like came out of nowhere, came out of left field because there are people like that. So it's not a tumor. It's not a tumor. I know, that's Schwarzenegger. And I don't have big balls. We all have the biggest balls in the world. Remember that song? He's got big balls. She's got big. Trust me, when you're a teenager and that song comes out, you're a preteen, and everybody on the bus is going, he's got big balls, she's got big balls, we got the biggest balls in the world. Teachers were not happy. Back in the day, a lot of you know this, but some of you don't. Remember when Adidas sneakers came out? They became very popular in like 1982, 1983, because Run DMC used to wear Adidas. And I was wearing Adidas, but mostly Puma, because my parents would buy me Puma sneakers. And when I went to school, everybody figured out what Adidas stood for. And I always thought Adidas stood for all day I dream about sex. That's what Adidas stands for. But no, they actually said Adidas stands for Anthony de Blasio is dumb and stupid. So when people like, oh, they were bullied in school, back when I was in grammar school, Adidas stood for Anthony de Blasio is dumb and stupid. So Triple X. Shout out to you, my friend. Thank you for the 2 spot. DT, what number would I rank Samoa Joe amongst Samoan greats? Well, I'll say this. Thank you for the 2 spot, my friend. I'd have to have a complete list of Samoan wrestlers in front of me because I know I will leave someone out, but I will tell you this. I put Afa and Sika above Samoa Joe. I know Samoa Joe wrestled rings around him. Afa and Sika, different time, different era, was not needed, that kind at that time. I put Afa and Sika as far as draw. Samoa Joe is a massive compliment for a show, but I still would put Afa and Sika above him, above Samoa Joe. The Rock, I would put above Samoa Joe. Roman Reigns, I would put above Samoa Joe. The Usos, I kind of would put above Samoa Joe because the Usos, look at what they've been able to do, even at their size and the fact they was, a tag team. I put Samoa Joe in front of Umaga, God rest his soul. Umaga was taken from us way too soon. I think of Samula, a.k.a. Samoan number 3. Rikishi, I kind of put Samoa Joe above Rikishi, although Rikishi might have been a better entertainer. That's why I don't like ranking wrestlers, because Rikishi was a better entertainer, but Samoa Joe's the better wrestler. So it's very, very difficult to rank, him amongst the Samoans. But I would put him in top 10. I think top 10. Yeah, Manu, right? Manu. The forgotten legacy member. I wonder if he walks around and says, WWE named the whole Hall of Fame wing after our group, the legacy wing. Manu, man, I tell you, for any of you out there, thank you, Triple X, for that. If any of you out there that are newer wrestling fans, it was not that long ago where we had Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase Jr. and Randy Orton and Manu. And didn't they take out CM Punk on a pay-per-view once? Listen, I know I have mellowed out over the years, but I truly felt bad for Manu because I watched him on TV, and I swear to you, every week I said to myself, why is this guy on TV? Like, I don't care who he's related to. He is not WWE material. I mean, they were forcing it. And I was just, I'm pleasantly surprised that they removed him as quickly as they did. But he just never clicked. I mean, to me, it's like him and Mike Adamle are like 2 of the names that, honestly, if you gave me one of those Men in Black ones that I would, use. Oh, man, Manu was not good. Tonga Kid was great. Tonga Kid, I met the Tonga Kid in 1985, I think it was. I met the Tonga Kid in 85. And they were trying to get him over with Snuka. And he was feuding a little bit with Roddy Piper at the time. The problem is, nothing against the Tonga Kid. We like the Tonga Kid. And Snuka, as an early wrestling fan, Snuka was my favorite until others came along. But when Roddy Piper was feuding with the Tonga Kid, I wanted Roddy Piper to beat the shit out of him. It's just something about him. All right. The only thing that I know about Manu is that he wrestled in the Northeast. I don't know if it was for Afa's group, but he was wrestling, I think, in the Pennsylvania area. I do remember his name popping up from time to time, and I'm almost 100% certain it was in the Pennsylvania area. As far as I know, he still wrestles. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that he wasn't a good wrestler. He just did not reek WWE superstar. And I think that's the reason why he never made it in TNA. Never saw him in AEW. I mean, he's not old, so who knows, you know? In fact, if you want to look up a name that people have not talked about in a while, and I remember talking about him about 5 years ago, and I'm blown away. Of all the names, I'm going to throw one out there right now that nobody's thought about in ages. I'm going to throw one out there that's going to pique your interest. Of all of the names in wrestling that have disappeared from television for whatever reason, who has reinvented themselves to a degree that it would blow you away of how they appeared, and yet still did not make WWE, AEW, or Impact Wrestling TV. If you want to know the one guy, unless he stopped wrestling, unless he died, which I know he didn't, the one man, no one will ever get it, the one man that I cannot believe never made it back to those three companies, the way he looks right now. And if you Google him, it'll blow, pardon my language, it'll blow your fucking mind. When you look at this person and you remember what he was, you would be like, there ain't no way this is the same guy. Abraham Washington. Abraham Washington. Look it up. Listen, I know everybody's like, oh, like, subscribe, hit the reminder button, leave a comment, blah, blah, blah. It does help. It absolutely helps. You know, I love doing the video part, but, you know, the numbers, you know, sometimes the numbers say to me, I should just do audio only. So, but this is one time that I would love for you to comment on it after the show's over, obviously. Look up Abraham Washington. Look at what he looks like now. I mean, I can't even describe it. It'll blow you away. And you'll say to yourself, how the fuck did this guy not get back on TV? It's almost like science fiction, what he did. It's like I said, unless he's out of wrestling and I'm not aware of it, I personally think he is in wrestling still, because it was only about 5 years ago that I was seeing pictures like, what the fuck? But Abraham Washington. And for people that don't know who Abraham Washington is, he is the one that was with Titus O'Neil and, drawing a blank right now. Oh, and, oh my God, Darren Young. He was their manager, and he went on the mic and he would cut a promo while they were wrestling. And he made a really horrible remark about Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul, while he was still alive. I think that Kobe Bryant was accused of assault or something. And he said something on WWE television, and he got fired over it. Primetime Players, thank you. Primetime Players. I should remember Darren Young. He's my guy. He's my supplement guy. When I buy Prove It ketones, Darren Young sells me my Prove It ketones. I kid you not. He is my salesman, and he's taken good care of me over the years. If any of you out there are into, you know, ketones and keto and want to try a supplement, Prove It, Pruvit. It's a drink supplement, but it gives you ketones in your system as well, a lot of energy. Darren Young, he'll hook you up, and you could tell him, say, Don Toni told me that you sell the Prove It ketones. He'll hook you up. I don't know how much, if he can give you a discount, but all right. We're at 84 minutes. Let's leave in 5. 5 minutes, not 5 hours. We got a big night tomorrow. Cody Rhodes is wrestling Dominic again. Drew McIntyre is going to take on Jey Uso. That's going to be interesting. You know, as we said yesterday, Matt Riddle, if he is well enough to return, he will. If it's not this week, it'll be next week. It's up to him. But he was not pulled because of the JFK stuff, by the way. Other than that, you know, we'll see the usual. The Judgment Day, we run Monday Night Raw. I'm not crapping on it, but it does, I hate wrestling when you could skip a week, read the results, and kind of feel like you watched it. I don't know if anybody knows what I mean by that, and that happens a lot with Raw. I obviously do a Monday night show, so we have to talk about Raw because it's the Raw post show. But sometimes I'm watching Raw and I'm saying to myself, I could probably take a nap for 2 hours, go online, read someone who's dumb enough to type detailed, results as they happen, and, see it in my brain how everything went down and do a show and act like I saw it. So I hate having that feeling when it comes to Raw, but it does happen. So Gruss says Abraham Washington probably couldn't pass the steroid test. Yeah, I can understand why people would say that. Yeah, Abraham Washington has turned into a freak, guys, a freak, a science fiction freak. Put it this way: he makes the boogeyman look like was a really scrawny black guy, Chris Rock. All right, and look, he's not scrawny, and I'm only saying black because they're both black, obviously. If they were both white, I would say, who's a scrawny white guy? And I would say Brad Shepard. Yeah, he makes Boogeyman look like Chris Rock. I mean, put it this way, I honestly think Abraham Washington's triceps are the size of my head. For real. Okay. Let's wrap it up. Who got a question? Who's got a question? All right. I see we just got another super shout out from Jade Carlos. Hey, Carlos. What's going on? You want to know something? Growing up in Middle Village, Queens, my favorite pizzeria was called Carlos Pizzeria. They're still open to this day. Carlos Pizzeria. That's the pizzeria that I ate that time when I had to take a dump, and they said that the bathrooms weren't working. So I tried to go home, and I lived 3 blocks. For people that don't know this story, this actually has a wrestling theme to it. Back in the 80s, when I was like 15, 16 years old, me and my friends hung out in Juniper Park, and we drank Bud Nips all night long. And Bud Nips at the time were little mini versions of Budweiser, but they were in these tiny little glass bottles, Bud Nips. So we were in Juniper Park, and I was drinking I don't like drinking beer. And drinking beer gives you sometimes diarrhea, gives you the shits. So we were in Juniper Park in the summertime, and I was drinking Bud Nips, and I got a little bit drunk from it. And I wasn't driving yet, so I had to have been like 14 or 15 years old. So we go to the park, and we walk to Carlos Pizzeria. It's located on Metropolitan Avenue, Middle Village, Queens. They're still open to this day. I used to live 2 blocks away from Carlos Pizzeria, but 2 very, very long blocks, like New York City, Manhattan long blocks. So we're sitting at Carlos Pizzeria, and I'm eating pizza, and I'm half drunk, and I'm 14 or 15 years old, and my stomach is going, and I'm like, I got to take a shit. So I'm sitting there, and I'm just trying to act like nothing. And I don't remember who the counter guy was at the time. And I was like, can I use your bathroom? And they said, oh, the bathroom's out of order. I look at the door, and it says for employees only. And I don't see no out of order. So I'm like, please, I really have to go. He's like, can't you hold it in till you get home? I didn't want to say anything. I'm like, yeah, I can. So I was like, I got to leave. So I told my friends, like, look, guys, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm going to go home. So I walk out of the pizzeria. I cross Metropolitan Avenue, and now I'm on 74th Street, and I'm 2 long blocks away. I start walking, and it was like a bad cartoon. I started looking like Charlie Chaplin. I started walking fast, and I felt it, and I felt it. And I was like, I ain't making it home. One of my friends growing up, his name is Kenny. I know a lot of you know his last name, but we will not mention it again here. His uncle lived a half a block away from Carlos Pizzeria. He used to take us to the Ridgewood Grove Arena for wrestling. So I've hung out at his house many times before. I got halfway down the block and I'm like, I can't make it. And it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. It had to have been like 1 o'clock in the morning because the pizzeria would have been closed by 2. Midnight or 1 a.m. And it's pitch black. And again, this is the 80s, so there's no real cell phones or anything like that. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I remembered, my friend's uncle lived like a couple of houses away. I went back and I walked to the back of his house and all the lights were off. And I'm trying to see, and on his stoop, there was like a crater a little bit. And I swear to God, I pulled my pants down and I took this massive dump on the stoop of his house. And I'm laughing my ass off because I'm half drunk and I'm picturing what's going to happen the next day when they open the door and they see this big pile of mess. But I had nothing to wipe my ass with. And I looked around and he had like one of these rags, probably from working on his car, that has like oil and grease on it. And I just wiped my ass. And I threw it on the floor and I left. And then about 2 weeks later, we were going to the Richard Grove Arena to see WWF. And I remember my cousin saying something, we were talking about something. He's like, somebody took a massive shit in my uncle's backyard. And I started laughing a little too hard. He was looking at me, and then I revealed years later that it was me. I couldn't hold it. But Carlo's Pizzeria, still in business today. Those pieces of shit wouldn't let me use the bathroom. So, all right. Sorry, not sure if you talked about it before, but how I haven't heard anyone else talking about the accident of Von Wagner had on NXT with Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker, they are doing a great storyline right now because when he was an infant and he had the surgery on his skull and his brain, it generated a crazy amount of sympathy to Von Wagner. And I talked about them using Von Wagner almost like Frankenstein. Because when Von Wagner was a kid and he had those scars in the surgery, he was legitimately bullied. He was made fun of. He looked like a freak. So you see Von Wagner now and you see his head and his cranium and you see he almost looks like he could have been an extra from Planet of the Apes. They're building on that sympathy. So now he feuds with Braun Breaker. And what does Braun Breaker do? That bastard, he goes for the head. And you do that, and you do the stretcher, and the blood, and the fans, the camera angle, everything about it, it feels so real that they fucking nailed it. That's what this is all about. They did a great job. Listen, Von Wagner, I expect to show up at NXT No Mercy. And it's going to be interesting because Von Wagner is not aligned with Baron Corbin. And Von Wagner obviously needs revenge on Braun Breaker. But this is all to build further on Von Wagner. Remember, Von Wagner got drafted to the main roster. I think people forget. Oh, no, he was a free agent, right? Von Wagner was labeled as a free agent, so he could go wherever he wanted. But they are doing this to continue with the character. And it's very smart that they're doing this. You know why? Because when he goes to the main roster, if they ever want to do a storyline with the head, no matter how fucked up the storyline is or no matter how innocent the storyline is, they could always reference what happened in NXT. They could bring up, remember the time when Braun Breaker did what he nailed him with the steps in the head? So this is something that they could always go back to down the line. So great job on everybody involved. And I'm happy for Von Wagner. I'm happy that he turned the corner like that because, his claim to fame was come Tuesday. Everybody online, come Tuesday. Come Tuesday. Von Wagner is actually better than that. And I've always liked Von Wagner. If anybody's ever heard my shows, I've always liked Von Wagner. So I like that the fans are invested in him now. It's definitely, his stock has gone up. In the last 6 months, Von Wagner's stock has gone up. Braun Breaker's stock has gone up. Braun Breaker is having a ball right now doing what he's doing. He's having a freaking ball. So, very, very good shit. Thank you, Carlos. And thank you all. I am going to jet out of here. Fun weekend. Glad to be back. Still not exactly where I should be physically, emotionally. I think the problem staying in Florida for 11 days is we got up whenever we felt like waking up. And, now having to get used to getting up at 6:30 in the morning during the week is not all that fun. But for those that are interested, tomorrow night, I know this thumbnail looks a lot like Saturdays, but we have to talk about it. I'm telling you, this match is a very, very, very strong possibility for WrestleMania. We will definitely talk about it on Monday after we cover Raw. So I hope you could join me Monday night, the 18th of September, for the Raw post show. We will get into Raw. We will talk about the weekend ratings. I will reveal Impact's number, which I can't believe they scored the number that they did. And that's not a compliment. We talked about that yesterday. And then we'll also plug this week in history. I tell you, I was going through the thumbnails for this week in history, and there's a couple of doozies, but the one that I keep smiling about more than anything because it's still relevant to this day, and I can't believe it's been 7 years already. In 2 days, I think it's the 19th of September, it'll be the 7-year anniversary where Chris Jericho created the List of Jericho. It's been 7 years already, the List of Jericho. You just made the list. So, we have some good ones this week, some really good ones. But also, when they did the pregnancy storyline with Lita and Kane, we were talking about Kane earlier, and Lita unfortunately had the miscarriage. And Lita is in the hospital, and she's got that stoic look on her face. And Kane's got this weird laughter in the background. That happened this week in history, too. So, we will definitely get into it. But if you enjoyed the show, you know what to do. I don't need to tell you. But definitely, if you're curious, look up Abraham Washington and tell me what you think. Because when I saw that several years ago, it blew me away. And I still, 5 years later, plus, I can't believe this guy never made it back to TV. So, then again, maybe he didn't want to. So, much love, everybody. Talk to you all again soon. Be well.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a podcaster. For me to live any other way was nuts. To me, those goody-good people who worked shitty jobs for bum paychecks and took the subway to work every day and worried about their bills were dead. I mean, they were suckers. They had no balls. If I wanted something, I just took it. I ran everything. I paid the bills. I paid the host. I even paid the masked maniac. Everybody had their hands out. Everything was for the taking. We always called each other good fellas. You would always hear from somebody. You're gonna like Don Toni. He's all right. He's a good fella. He's one of us. But if you're part of my crew, nobody ever tells you they're gonna get rid of you. It doesn't happen that way. There weren't any arguments or curses like in the movies. See, your haters come with smiles. They come as your friends, the people who've claimed they care the most for your life. And now that's all over. And that's the best part. Today everything is different. There's lots of action. I don't have to wait around for everything like everyone else. Oh, I didn't get the vaccine? Fuck you, vaccine me. Oh, your delivery guy has COVID? Fuck you, feed me. Right after I moved here, I ordered egg noodles and ketchup, and I got spaghetti with meat sauce. I'm no longer an average nobody, while they get to live the rest of their lives like a bunch of schnooks.